So it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I text him, and he immediately texts me back and is like, "Can you come tonight and get it?" And I was like,
Absolutely, I
sounds
can.
this sounds extremely shady.
Is there any
And
way I can Venmo you first before we meet?
Detroit,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Three
But
o'clock in the morning, yes.
I
You
would just
need
feel more
money,
comfortable if you already had the money.
yeah,
That way, we don't have to exchange money when we meet. Is that possible?
yes.
Would you be able to accept it? When I
It's
bought
funny.
that, what's that?
There's a guy I was telling about this, and he's like, "Yeah, I've bought and stolen stuff too." I was like, "I didn't even think of that."
Well, who knows where things come from? That can't possibly be. I mean, there's no way to know that. I wouldn't think if somebody's got something nice and they're selling it. I never even thought about where they might have got it.
Yeah,
But they're not. It's not like I'm buying something that's $1,000 and I'm buying it for $45 or something. It's like, they, we're so used to it. Things are more competitively priced. When I went for the big monitor, that giant
yeah,
49-inch
9 inch.
monitor that I have, yeah.
Yeah,
I was looking at deals on that too because everything with Amazon or Best Buy was going to be, I don't know, like a week and a half out, maybe even longer. I don't remember, but it was a period of time because everything was pretty much out of stock. That's something else that people are apparently buying up as soon as they can. And there was one for sale on Craigslist, and so I said, "Look, I'll give it to you. I'll give you, $100 less, easy. I'll just send you the money." And we'll just do the deal right now. I'm an easy buyer. I'm not gonna mess you around this. We'll just pick a time. And yeah, they responded and they said, yeah, okay. I said, great. What is your address? And they said, well, send us the money and we'll send you the address. I was like, well, okay, if that's the way you do it, I don't know. I'm like, so I haven't seen the product in real life. I have no idea if the screen is smashed or if it even exists. I don't know where you live or who you are because you're on Craigslist, so your email's hidden even. Like, I know nothing about you, and you're like, send me the thing. So I sent him, I said, look, you gotta up your game because that's not even a very good scam. I mean, nobody's gonna do like. You have to at least have some kind of angle of plausible of believability. And with those people, I actually think it might have just been some people who didn't know what the heck they were doing and were nervous to sell on Craigslist
yeah.
because I actually lowballed them a couple $100 first and they didn't even respond. And then I responded to another with another email from another email just to see if they were even reading the Craigslist automatic thing.
Okay.
And they responded. And I said, is it still available? That's all I said. Instead of saying, this is what I want, I'll make it easy, whatever. I just said, is it still available from a different address? And they said, yes, but the price is firm, $800 or $850 or whatever it was. And I was like, okay, so they didn't respond to my first one where I was trying to lowball them. They didn't even try and negotiate. And if you're doing a scam, what do you care? Sure, I'll give it to you for
Yeah.
500.
You gotta have standards.
Yeah,
If you're gonna be running a scam, you can't be taking less than
right.
full price for your scam.
Yeah, but as far as they know, I was a totally different person.
Yeah. Well.
So one was from a work email and one was a personal email. So
Yeah.
then when I said, okay, I'll buy it, that's when they said, all right, send the Venmo first, and then I'll tell you the address. And then when I was like, that's not even a clever scam. No one's going to do that. And they said, well, you don't understand how it's done. And I never heard from him again. There was you would think if it was a scam, which it sounds like, you would think there would be some kind of a discussion or, hey, yeah, I need it. Why don't you Venmo me? I'll meet you at this place. Like there was no conversation at all. He had zero salesmanship, nothing, but They did say Venmo before I give you my address. It's like, no.
Now, I've never used Venmo. In fact, the only reason it ended up on my phone is Sarah downloaded it, and so it like magically shows up on my phone. But do you have the ability to take back the money if there's some sort of goofy thing that went down?
Here's the thing. There's probably avenues I haven't explored. So I can't say 100% definitively, but 99% sure you cannot.
Okay.
So if I send you the money and you accept it, the only thing you could do is you could call up Venmo and say that guy Dave is a scam. And
Okay.
then Venmo could probably work to undo what you sent, right?
I
They might
Yep.
contact me and say, what happened? And they'll try and figure out if I'm legitimate.
I see.
But
Okay.
yeah, if you send it to me, the thing is, Venmo is not, it's connected to a bank. So
Yep.
if you send it to me, there's a delay. So if I'm a scam, you can call Venmo and say, "Look, that guy's a scam. I didn't get my thing." They can stop it before it goes from them to a bank.
Yeah.
But they're not going to just do it as it was a mistake. It's like, we'll just ask for it back. Because I can send you money without you would accept it on the other end if I sent it. I can also request money from you, meaning, hey, pay me, $30 for lunch. And then you go in and you can say, yes, I will pay it. And so there's confirmation on both sides either way. And
Okay.
if you follow through with that, it's kind of like you snooze, you lose. You can't just go undo that payment. All you can do is request another one for them to send it back. So it's really easy.
Did you ask them if they had any pickup trucks available?
No. Why? Why did we get scammed with a pickup truck? Oh, my brother did. Is that what you're talking about? My brothers? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going around. People trying to scam you. That one was particularly skilled, though. That scam.
Yeah. Because Josh actually looked at the registration of the truck
Yeah.
and it had everything right, but it was fake, but it looked right. And then he looked at the guy's driver's license, which was fake, but it looked right, and the driver's license matched the registration.
It
So
seems that he did his due diligence there.
he did his due diligence, although for my brother, like, I didn't feel good about it at any point.
Okay.
And I didn't know it was a scam, but it was like, I don't like anytime you're buying something and it's super cheap. And the reason is because, well, I just got through a divorce and I don't want my wife to get the truck. And so he wants to do a cash deal under the table to keep it off the books from his wife. And it's like, well, Josh, why are you getting involved in that? It's like, look, his wife is owed half the truck and he knows it. So even if it was above board, it was also kind of shady, right? Because,
Yeah.
you know, Josh, even if Josh got the truck scot free and got a way cheaper deal, well, that cheap deal came out of the guy's wife's pocket.
And yeah, yep. It came out of his wife's pocket, and he, I mean,
If the story was real.
theoretically, he lost 50. She only lost 50%, but he was planning on, because it was a cash deal, he was going to not give her the 50%.
Yeah.
Is that how?
Yeah.
Okay.
The theory is that
So
he owns a truck that's worth 30 grand. And
yeah,
then he sells it for 19 and he's going to keep the 19 grand in his pocket and his wife
yeah,
doesn't get anything, which is stupid because it's like, Josh, you're ripping her off 4 grand in the scheme of what's legal. Now, in some ways, I don't want to get into it because I don't have specifics. I've never been in the situation, but some of the laws for separating things is not really great. I
yeah.
mean, if
It's
you're
messed.
married and you got 3 kids and then she's out there going out and having a fun time and then meet some guy in Vegas and she's going to just run off with him. And it's like, here, you keep the kids. I'm going out to have a good time. And by the way, split everything you have and give it to me. It's like, well, that's, there's certain, you don't know the situation. So, but
Yeah.
legally she's due 50%. And the guy's story was he was trying to get this deal done under the table before the divorce so that he didn't have to pay the wife the money.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
they both paid 30, or he did. So who knows, whatever.
Yeah. I could imagine myself falling for the same situation.
Not me. I'm always on the side of women.
Yeah, I would have, you have, it's kind of like, hey, that's your deal. If you want to sell me a truck for cheap and I've got the cash for it, let's do this. Somebody's going to get it. It might as well be me.
Yeah.
Uh, like
But
that's what I would be thinking. I'd be like, man, this is a great deal. Like I'm going to get this, right. But what ended up happening?
well, I mean, it ended up being a lie. But this was my point so much. Not even shouldn't have even gotten into the story. But the point is, if I have something that if I had this nice new microphone that everybody wants and it's worth $400, if I
Yeah.
put it for sale for $200, then I don't need a story to convince you on why I'm selling it for less than it is. Right? It's like either take it or
Yeah.
leave it, dude. If you want it, I'm selling it for $200. Somebody's going to snap it up like that. And if somebody wants to know, hey, I don't know about that. That seems too low. I think it might be broken or something like that. It's like, buy. I've got a line out the door that'll buy it. So if
Yeah.
you got a truck that's 19,000, it's a $30,000 1-year-old truck. It's like you don't need. I don't. The fact that you're telling the story makes me think you're selling something.
Hmm.
And if you're giving a deal that's that good, you could be the one interviewing who should get this great deal instead of trying to convince somebody to take the great deal.
Yeah. It's interesting though. Um,
And it's
in a
out of state.
psychology. Yeah, it was out of state. That was an extra added complexity to the situation. But in a psychology class I took, they say that if you ask someone to do something, there's a certain threshold of whether or not they'll agree to do it or not. But then if you ask someone to do something and then use the word because and then anything, could be anything. It could be, hi, could I cut in front of you in the copier machine? Because I have something waiting in the microwave. I mean, it could be anything. It doesn't even matter. But if you use the word because and then give some reason, immediately it increases the likelihood that people are going to let you do it.
Interesting. I wonder if that would work for me because I typically try and solve people's problems. And as soon
Uh
as
huh.
someone gives me a because and it's something stupid, then I immediately think, why are you doing it that way then? Like I think to myself, you're completely ridiculous. That doesn't make sense.
So
When a homeless
you'd be
person's
like,
yeah, when a homeless person's out of gas and he's standing in front of a grocery store, I immediately think, why aren't you at a gas station? Because I
yes,
don't have gas. No one here has gas. You don't even have a gas can. And so
they want
you
money.
need money for gas. Now, that psychologist would probably also tell you it's better to beg at a grocery store for gas because nobody can solve that problem, so they just give you money. Whereas if you're at a gas station, they will give you gas, and you don't want gas. And so, yeah, but that just puts me off the hook because I'm like, dude, use your head. If you want gas, go to a gas station. Ask people buying gas. Don't ask me at a grocery store for you to have gas. I can't help you.
Huh. So what
And
you're saying is you would try to problem solve their situation. So
I
if I
would,
say, hey, can I skip in front of you in front of the copier machine because you know, I've got to get to my class, you'd be like, here, give me your stuff and go to class and I'll take care of it for you.
I might offer that, but if what you just explained is a legitimate excuse, what you just explained is a legitimate reason, Okay, so
Yeah.
you're right. If somebody says, "Hey, I'm in a real rush. Can I do my copies before you?" Then I'm not going to be like, "Well, why is your schedule so tight?" No, I'm a
Or the,
nice
give
I'm
us
a
the
nice
calendar.
guy. You can go in front of me. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal. But the if you tell me a reason, you said if you say because and then insert anything, like if you say, hey, can I cut in front of you because you know I got something I want to, I mean, I've got another batch of copies that I got to do later or something that doesn't make any sense. I would just
Yeah.
say that doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah,
Okay.
your because puts me to work.
Huh.
Whereas if you just ask me, can I go in front of you? I'm probably going to say yes. Because I'm not going to just be able, I would have a hard time just telling someone flat no and being selfish. Then if you give me a stupid reason, you give me a reason why I can say no. Like you've just
Okay.
put forward my, this is the battleground. These are my cards and you've just put them face up. I can decide to either fold or I can decide I've got a stronger hand than you because your reason is stupid.
Interesting.
But
See, you took this the opposite way of what I think most people do.
and maybe
So,
even the opposite of me because I can't test myself. But
but here's the deal. When I hear that, I think to myself, okay, this is a new strategy that I can use, right?
yeah,
I can now ask someone something that I probably wouldn't normally ask
hmm,
and then use the because and then fill in a blank. And I'm going to try to come up with something legitimate, but
Stevie,
they
can you
say,
go clean your room right now because I've got to get to bed early tonight.
yeah, yes, dad.
Stevie's like, sure. I think it's the least I could do. You got to get to bed early, so I may as well clean my room.
Yeah. I don't want you to have to put up with my noise of,
Yeah,
picking up
cleaning.
clothes. I'm a loud cleaner.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's why it's one of those things where you never know what you would actually do until you're in the test. And sometimes if you wouldn't even think about it, somebody's asking me a favor, it's like sure, you
Have you ever done a psychological test?
probably, but I don't know what I scored. I think genius.
No, they like bring you in and they'll even pay you a lot of times. And
Oh, I've
you have
never done that.
no idea what's going on, right?
Hmm.
So like I had a friend, he was like, "Hey, you want to go take this psychological test with me?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" So we we go up to like this science room and you have no idea what they're testing at all, right? Like there's no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
And they they just like do weird things. Like one time there was just loud music playing and it's like and then you're like filling out a questionnaire, but there's like really loud music playing. And you know that the loud music has something to do with why you're putting up with all of this, but you have no idea. So like you suspect there's something goofy going on. But you're just sitting there going, I don't know.
I feel
Like
like I'm too smart in that. Okay, there's some loud, obnoxious music here, and there's no off button, and I know it's part of a test. It's like, okay, I'll be the psychopath that just breaks the machine because it's like, okay, there you go. Or you're trying to see who's gonna. It comes from the ceiling or something like that, and there's nothing I can do. It's like, okay, they want to see who's gonna crack and give up the money first. I'm
yep.
first. I'm like, I know your game is something, so I'm not gonna play, and
Yeah,
I'll be the crazy one, the
it
one who
wasn't like
has.
the level where it's like really bugging you, but it's just like it's on. It's not a normal music that you would have having someone fill out a questionnaire. And you're just sitting there thinking, I know that's the variable they're testing,
Yeah,
and I don't know how to act to either confirm whatever they're trying to figure out or to totally screw it up. Like you're just sitting there thinking, this is strange and I don't get it. I love those tests. Like they're crazy, and I like reading about them. some of the craziest things they've studied. Like they did a study where they took these referees for wrestling. I don't know what are they called, referees? Do you know?
I call them that.
People, grown men who are right there scoring wrestling matches. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah,
We'll
they're
call
called
them refs.
refs. Hmm.
They have like high level refs that like ref Olympic wrestling matches, right?
Hmm.
And so what they did was they took video of wrestling matches and they played them, right? And the ref would sit there watching the TV and would score them. And what they did was, I guess in the Olympics, you don't wear your country's colors. You only wear red or blue. And it doesn't matter if you're Russia or America. In some matches, you'll be wearing red. In some matches, you'll be wearing blue. So they have this wrestling match, and the refs, on average, would give more points to the person wearing red. And what's amazing is they would actually play video, not back to back, but they would kind of put random videos in, and they would play of the same video, but they changed the color of the outfits. So now the blue player is wearing red, the blue wrestler is wearing red, and the red wrestler is wearing blue, and it's nuts. They will actually there's times where the red wrestler wins both times, even though they're it's the same match and different wrestlers. So
Huh. Well, that sucks for everybody who lost the Olympics or got the silver because they were wearing blue.
yeah,
As far as the test, though, I know Community did that where they did a psychological test where they had everybody get in a waiting room, and all they did
uh-huh.
was they kept on saying, "All right, it'll just be a few more minutes." Official girl with the pad, go and then leave out, and some of them are like, "All right, forget it, I'm done waiting," and then they would leave, and then they kept on whittling it down until it was just Abed, and the goal of the people doing the study was what's the maximum, so they had to wait out everybody, and then all of the testers, there was like a room full of testers, all of them went crazy, all of them were slamming their stuff down, and so the girl would go in, and it was like 2 days later, and she's walking in like, "We're almost ready, just a few more minutes." And Abed's like, "Yeah, that's fine."
His character is great.
Yeah, that was funny. So no, I've never taken a psychological test. I would not be a good candidate for that because I would be overthinking it and I would intentionally be disruptive. And then they would
Yeah,
think, all right, he's a psycho, or they wouldn't get an accurate reading of me because I would try and do something out of the box just to be unique.
yeah, it's interesting.
That's my Enneagram type. We like uniqueness. Anything different is good, apparently. So you sent me this thing on Mark, and you asked me to read it. Mark 21:8-7.
Mark 8, 11 through 21.
21. Yeah, I know.
Okay, good. I'm like, wow, he really screwed that up.
I know.
That wasn't
Well,
wasn't even close. He
I
was
said
using like
that.
numbers and stuff.
Yeah,
The
I said
let
that because when you told me it on the phone earlier, I kept repeating it back to you wrong. So I thought, well, I should probably do that again. But I thought it was interesting. I'm interested in what you have to say about it. So I'll pull it up real quick here. Mark 8, and this was after he fed the 4,000. And as you reminded me, he fed the 4,000 and he fed the 5,000. Those were two totally separate miracles, two different crowds. And so this says the disciples had forgotten to bring bread except for one loaf they had with them. that was in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. So the disciples discussed this with one another and said, "It's because we don't have any bread." Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" 12, they replied. "And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up?" They answered, 7. He said to them, "Do you still not understand?" And then it just sort of switches on to the next story where they came to a new town.
Yeah, that was the end of where we were going.
Yeah.
Do you not yet understand?
Yeah. So it's like bread is not a difficult thing for us to come by. You're all worried about how much bread. I mean, you've seen me make a lot of bread out of basically nothing. And you've got one, but I mean, there's only 12 of you. I made 7 and feed 4,000 people, and there was leftovers.
Yeah.
So, so what, what of that? What did that? Why did you bring that up, and what was your take from it?
Well, the reason I brought it up is this morning my brother did a sermon on this, right? My brother is not a pastor, but he he has gone to seminary, and he does periodically do sermons for various churches. And this is the section he was on today. And I suspect that the church is just going through Mark, and so that's where he ended up.
You
And
don't think
he
Andy would have chosen it?
I don't think so. And if you were going to choose it, wouldn't you pick the previous chapter where he actually feeds the 4,000?
I would have picked something easier for sure.
So, but it's funny because he did a good job. Like, I read this and it's like, yeah, I don't see much there. Like, obviously the disciples are screwing up again. They're doing they're not having faith, and it's just they just don't have it right now. And so Jesus is like, "Hey, why can't you get with it? Don't you understand?" The question that immediately came to mind after they read it was, what exactly was it that he wanted them to understand? So that was my first question.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot here that I would not have read into it initially. Um, for example, there was a part where he's like, having eyes, do you not see? Having ears, do you not hear? This was a low blow, right?
Yeah. He said that a lot.
Yeah, but I suspect that this was a low blow because it's like, yesterday when I healed the blind guy who couldn't see, and now he's able to see, and he's changed everything about him, and you guys have eyes, and I don't need to do anything for you, but you're not even getting with you know, the the program yet, right? Like, it's just kind of funny. And then he's like, yeah, you have ears and you're actually hearing what's happening. You have eyes, you're seeing what's happening. And I think it's kind of a low blow. I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah. When Jesus talks, he talks very seemingly condescending a lot. And I've noticed that as I've been reading in the last couple of months, focusing on more of the things that he says. He is not afraid to take just about anyone to task every chance he gets. And I think it's funny that the perception of him is so meek and mild and sweet and nice and generous. It's like everybody can think about cast the first stone. If you're perfect, then you go ahead and cast the first stone.
Yeah.
And then, of course, no one does it. And then he's like, see, I don't judge you either. So everyone's like, oh, that's really nice. Everybody knows that. But whenever he's with his friends, he's like, yeah, you, get behind me, Satan. Or, how is it you have got eyes, but you can't hear? Or he talks to the Pharisees like, you brood of vipers. It's like, he's harsh. And it's not
Yeah.
just, it's not people say, oh, that's to the Pharisees he was harsh. Yeah, he was harsh to the Pharisees too. He was also harsh to his best friends. He was a very direct speaker. And,
Yeah.
the people who come up to him and they're like, oh, I would follow you anywhere. And Jesus is like, why? Thinking you're going to get something because foxes have holes in the ground and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. So it's like, my interpretation is that it's like, I'll follow you anywhere. It's like, yeah, right. Because you think you're going to get something out of it. Trust me, you're not going to get anything. I don't have anything, and I'm the one leading this thing. And then we never hear from that guy again.
Yeah.
And it's
And
like,
it's interesting
it's a
you said
harsh thing to say.
condescending.
Huh?
When you said condescending, I was like, ooh, that's horrible. Like I wouldn't describe Jesus as condescending. But then you give it a thought, and it's like of all the people in the entire world
Mm-hmm.
or universe and all of the existence, he's the one person that actually can be condescending.
Sure.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
it's
I
like,
don't think he ever spoke out of turn. I'm just saying, when I hear him speak, I think to myself, I wonder how I would have responded to that because I think it would have poked my pride.
yeah,
If I stick my neck out and I get the impression that he wants people to follow him, and I stick my neck out and say, I'll follow you, and then I think there's going to be some sort of a reward or some sort of a pat on the back. And then his response is, well, I've got nothing. So just so you know, it's like, oh, okay. So you cut at, I guess, my motives possibly. But another guy says, hey, well, first I will follow you, but then just let me bury my father. And then Jesus says, yeah, let the dead bury their own dead. It's like, you're talking about my dad. It's like, he's not dead yet. And I've heard people do messages where they're saying, well, what he was saying is basically go home and live out the rest of his life until his dad died. And then, so he was like prolonging it. And I always thought, okay, well, that seems reasonable. That's not a genuine commitment because a lot can happen between now and when your dad dies, right? So I get that was a lot to say, hey, I'll follow you, but first let me go live out the rest of my dad's life, if that's what he meant. But that's really kind of a lame, I think, explanation because the very next verse, somebody else says, hey, Jesus, I'll follow you, but first let me just go say goodbye to my father. Like, I'm not gonna go bury him. Just let me go say goodbye. And that was when he said something like, anybody who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not worthy of the kingdom of heaven. So it's sort of like, if you're going to take on the mantle of, if you're going to do this, you better do it, because if you decide to get on the horse, I'm going to jump into giving my life to God fully, but then I'm going to look back at my old way, my old life, and I'm just going to long for that. It's like, you're not worthy.
yeah.
So Jesus is like, don't even start. I mean, that's how I interpret it, because those three people, we never hear from them again.
Yeah. But it is interesting. Matthew, who is a tax collector, I assume he's sitting at a desk in the middle of the city. He's collecting bags and bags of money or something.
He's probably a
Jesus
Mac.
shows
He's
up
probably a
to him.
Mac person.
Yeah, he definitely has a Mac. That's assumed. But he's sitting there, and Jesus comes up to him, and he's like, "Hey, let's do this. And Matthew was like, I hated this job anyhow. And he just like walked away. Right. And
Yeah, no one
actually,
likes me.
yeah, nobody likes me, but he has a pretty good gig, right? Like that is a position that the Roman government gave to him, and he's going to be, hated by the people around him, but he's got a pretty good gig. But I mean, he just up and disappeared, right? Like he just walked away and went with Jesus. So in his case, he did do that. And then I don't remember which were the fishermen. I think Peter was
Peter
the
and his
fish.
brother. Yep, Peter and his brother.
Yeah. What was the brother's name? I don't remember. So,
Um, Probably Zach.
yeah,
I think.
yeah. So
I don't know.
Peter, Zach, I'm pretty sure Zach is right on. But anyhow,
It's the English translation.
they were fishermen, which to me sounds like not a great job, but it's my understanding that they would have been kind of wealthy people, right? And they would have in the future planned on having a really good business, fishing. Um, and Jesus came to them and he was like, "Hey, let's go." And they just walked away, right? Like they really didn't look back. So it is interesting that some of the disciples where we have the story of how they came under the fold, uh it's just totally like they just went after it. So it
Reckless
is,
abandon. Yeah, they're all in right from minute one.
and he's just like he really didn't have a house. It's like, what did they see in him that they decided, hey, this is what we're doing?
Where did they actually sleep? The
So
boat?
it's my understanding that Jesus did live with like Mary and Lazarus for a time, right? Like he was kind of bumming a room from people once he left his parents' house.
Okay.
Um, so he was like, yeah, your old roommate. But
But how do you have 12 disciples if
yeah, I'm not sure.
you can't all 13 of you sit.
We're coming in. You get some couches.
I will say, I don't know what happened, but your camera became all fuzzy. Did you notice that?
On my end, it looks nice and clean, but it's possible that the uh, the connection is goofy.
Interesting. Well, I should probably hardwire mine in. I have it on Wi-Fi, so that would give me more upload speed. It looks better now, somehow.
Mine did.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
a little bit.
gotcha.
But yeah. So that's interesting. Well, that Andy did a good job. What was Andy's point? What did Andy get from that? Not to worry.
It's funny.
A
Well, I
generic.
mean, anytime you get into bread, anytime the Bible's talking about bread, it seems like the answer is you need to trust God, right? When manna was falling from the sky, you need to trust God that He's going to bring the manna back the next day, right? So don't take more than you need for that day. Um, and then the Lord's Prayer, give us today our daily bread. It seems like there's a theme with bread that we should be trusting in God for our provide for us. So I think here this is also God's providing the fish and loaves, and you also have the situation where they're sitting there with one loaf of bread. For me, that sounds like a lot of bread, but I guess it's smaller bread. It's probably not sliced either. But
Yeah, that was before sliced bread.
I wonder what the best thing was back then.
One of my favorite Family Guy clips is when the dad Peter says, "This is the greatest thing since sliced bread," and it cuts back to like the 1500s as before sliced bread, and this guy pulls a stool up to a bar and he says, "Well, I'd like a sandwich, but I don't know if I could eat two whole loaves of bread."
It was
So
the only
anyway,
other possible option. But yeah, so I think that when you get into like the question is, what did he mean when he said, "Don't you understand?" Right? He explained, "Listen, I just fed 4,000 people yesterday, or really recently. I just fed 4,000 people with just a couple fish and loaves, and we had an abundance left. Right? We had baskets and baskets and baskets remaining of fish and loaves, and I did that." With just a little bit. And before that, I fed 5,000 and we had 12 baskets of fish and loaves remaining. And it's like, seriously, we're riding across, this lake and we have one loaf and you guys are freaking out.
Well,
It's
it's funny
like,
because it's like they thought Jesus was going to be mad about it. They're like, "Oh man, he knows we only have one loaf of bread." And it's like, so when he says, "Beware of the yeast of the Pharisees," it's like he's mentioning it. He knows. That's a
yeah,
subtle hint. He's telling us with his little teaching ways, we forgot to bring more bread.
yeah.
And
One thing that Andy brought up is when he mentioned that, he was saying that the Pharisees are self reliant, right? They're self reliant and they're like self involved. They think they're so good that they don't need Jesus, right?
yeah,
And so when he's talking about they're the unleavened, it's it's a hit against the Pharisees because they don't trust God. And so when they bring so yeah, you're right. Like Jesus really did bring that up. I mean it's funny because it says uh now they had forgotten to bring bread and they only had one loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, "Watch out, beware." There's
the yeast of the Pharisees and of Herod.
beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. And they began discussing. All right, so it must have been a different version, but it said he noticed that they were doing that. So he said this, right? Like it was in response to them realizing, oh no, we don't have any bread. But
Jesus did a good job of doing these fantastic miracles, but making the disciples feel like this was a once in a lifetime event. Because you're right. If I saw you, you feel like you could take a step back and say, all right, we had 5 loaves and 2 fish, and we fed 5,000 people with just that. And then when we only had 7 breads, we fed 4,000 people. The fact that we have any bread at all, it would seem like, hey, can you just multiply this 12 times? I mean, we're all ready for dinner.
yeah, I wouldn't be worried, right? Like you wouldn't be sitting there going, "Oh man, we're gonna starve to death. We
It's
only have one loaf of bread."
boy, sure am hungry. I
Hey,
I don't.
Jesus,
Yeah, I mean,
have you noticed how much bread we have?
we almost have too much, huh? We got a whole loaf just for the 12 of us. One loaf, that's good for
And
almost 1,000 people in your way.
and I don't know if you've
So
checked the watch, but it is dinner time.
yeah, that sun's been
Or
past. Did I hear a bell? Is that dinner bell? I think I heard a bell.
hey, Peter, I think we're learning about fasting tonight.
We must be because Jesus hasn't given us any more bread, and we only have the one. Right, Jesus? Right? Nobody's trying to buddy up to him and be like, "Hey, here's the deal." But it was like they all collectively forgot. I wonder if Jesus said, I wonder if we look back, if we get the real story. Jesus said, "All right, and then before we leave, make sure we got like plenty of bread." And then they all were like,
All those
bread.
baskets that we have back there,
I'm so
bring some of that with us.
Yeah, and meanwhile, they just ate their stomachs full from the last group meeting. It's like, oh man, I don't care about bread. I'm not. This is the last thing I'm thinking. I've had so much bread. And then once they get out to the water, they're like, Oh shoot, he told us to bring bread. We didn't bring any. Maybe
And
that's
there's
what happened.
someone's like, oh wait, look, in this crevice in this boat, there's one loaf, and it's a little bit soggy in some areas and really hard in some other areas.
I would go hungry.
Fasting it is.
Fasting it is. Yeah,
Does anyone know how to fish?
it's an odd passage to do a message on, but the lesson seems relatively clear, and that is, you know, if you're with Jesus and all you have is bread, you don't have to worry about having enough bread for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Like 10 guesses.
Yeah. So, um, I I'm sure that if Jesus had a conversation with me, it would be with condescending might sound critical of him speaking, and so I shouldn't say that, but probably wouldn't be. Man, you're just nailing it, Dave. Nicely done. I mean, you really got it figured out. Because I worry about Brett all the time. Something as insignificant about that. I'm worried about what's going to happen next. If as a consultant, you go, okay, well, I could just lose my job at any time, and I've worried about that for 5 years, which is a long time to worry about losing your job because a lot of people get fired. I've seen people come and go in the company, full-time employees that have been fired in
Yeah.
stay less time than me. And whenever I'm in a meeting, I've been there. I'm in the top 10% of people who have been there the longest.
Huh.
So I'm like a veteran.
You
So
can't leave. All the plants would die.
yeah. So I think it's a good thing. It is confusing that the disciples couldn't if you have Jesus there, I don't understand why you would be concerned about the one thing he definitely has proven he can provide. But
Yeah, and the strange thing is they dropped everything to follow him, and now that they're following him and seeing him do remarkable miracles, that's when they're losing faith, right? Like that's when it says their hearts are hardening, right? Like they don't they're just not putting the trust in him that they obviously could have in him. So I don't know. Kind of an interesting read.
yeah, put yourself in the position of the disciples. You forgot the bread. You're nervous that Jesus is going to find, or what he's going to say when he finds out that you forgot the bread. In some ways, actually, that's kind of an interesting thing because a lot of times I have found that when I'm doing my best,
Okay.
where I'm really trying to live right,
Yeah.
then I think, oh no, I've messed up now. Like I remember when I moved to Texas, I felt strongly that God led me out to Texas.
Yeah.
And I remember a point in time where I was thinking, well, this isn't working out because nothing that I thought it was going to look like was playing out the way I would have expected. And I still had an apartment in California that my brother lived in. So I remember basically coming to terms with, yeah, I got to go back to California because I don't have anything here. I just moved. I just drove out here, but all my stuff is still in my truck, and I don't have a place to stay. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. I had friends, but that's it. And you know, I really felt like when it was time for me to go back to California, or when I thought I would, I felt convicted. Where God was like, "How do you come out here and then just quit as soon as things aren't going your way?" And I felt, okay, I should stick it out. And then I remember praying fervently for a job for like months And I was getting all these piecemeal, like I would get a job for a day, a job for 2 days or 3 days. And I was getting all these random work because I was desperate, but I was never getting anything steady. And then I remember, but all my stuff was like taken care of. I found a great apartment with a Christian roommate. I had a whole new group of friends, a new church. You know, everything was going like gangbusters, but I had no security because all the money that I was making, I was making money today, but I didn't know how I was going to make money tomorrow. And for like 4 or 5 months, actually, I was provided for that way. And of course, when you're living like that, you're also living on a very shoestring budget. Like I don't have enough money to buy any toys. I'm praying for my daily bread, and then I'm also praying for a steady job so I don't have to keep praying. And I remember when I hit the wall, and I called up my dad, and I was talking to him, and I was almost on the verge of tears because I was like, you know, I've been living like this for now a long time. And I was thinking about all the times I had gone out to a restaurant and bought tacos, and all the times when I had Starbucks, and all the times when I spent money that I didn't have to spend. And I had basically run out of my money. I'd run out of money. I didn't have a job that was going to pay right away. And I had my rent due in like 2 days or something. And I was like, here, I thought I was living on faith and I was trying to live on faith, but I was so guilty for every dime that I had paid wrong. And I knew so I didn't feel like it's not God's fault. I was like, God actually probably did give me the money for my rent, but I was not thinking and I was irresponsible. And so I actually felt like God is going to condemn me for this frivolous lifestyle that I've been having, you know. And then it was like my dad said that that's not how it works, and that, you know, I needed to just pray and not be worried about it. And I didn't believe him. But the next day I went, it's like a pastor story. I went, got the mail the next day, and my apartment from California, my brother had left and moved to Michigan. And that apartment somehow, I don't even know how, my brother must have given him my forwarding address, but they gave me my deposit back. And the
Really?
deposit from that apartment, which I'd been in that apartment for 3.5 years. I, I hadn't even thought about the deposit. And I figured, oh, that's that thing they always end up keeping anyway. I always thought deposits were a scam. They're just going to
Yeah.
justify all the paint and new carpet and whatever, everything they can so they don't have to pay me back my deposit. No, they gave me back like 90% of it. And it
Really?
paid for, and the deposit in California, the apartment was more than what my rent was in Texas. So that deposit completely, even though it was not a full month, completely covered the rent in Texas the very next day.
And was it just enough or was it more than what you needed? What was it?
I don't remember. It was like between $800 and $900, and
Okay.
my rent in Texas was right around between $800 and $900. So I don't remember, the specific, but basically I do know that that check covered my rent.
Yeah.
It didn't cover it so that I had any extra, but it also didn't cover it to where it wasn't a hardship anymore. It was like, oh, well, I can just pay my rent with this then. And I had no idea that was coming. And I just thought of that example because that's kind of like the disciples were thinking to themselves, we should have been more responsible. Like it was our job to pack for food and we didn't do it. And now what are we going to do? We don't want to ask for a miracle. We don't want to admit it because we were supposed to be packing properly and we didn't. So they're kind of stuck. They're like, well, it's like we don't have the right to ask for, you don't want to admit it. I didn't feel like I had the right to ask for help with my rent, or I didn't feel like I had the right, because I knew that I hadn't saved every dollar I could have saved.
Huh.
I knew there was several times of getting careless and ordering tacos with friends and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that goes back to the Mark passage, right? Because it's God was giving you, those 12 extra baskets, right? The 7 extra baskets of fish and loaves. It's God providing in abundance, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's God can provide even though you want to go and get fish tacos or whatever you're getting from time to time. And,
Yeah, I've heard.
it,
I've heard. Someone said that the most wasteful person is God,
hmm,
because when God makes a fruit tree, what happens? Well, most of the fruit just falls on the ground and rots. Like if you think of an apple tree, how many of those apples actually get eaten? I mean, it
very,
is an
very,
overabundance. Any plant you can think of, the amount of seeds it creates, the amount of fruit off of a tree is way more than what one would think was required.
yeah.
And God seems cool with it. And then there's pastors who always say, and it'll never come early, and but it'll never come late, and it'll always be. And they're always like, and I opened that envelope, and it was the exact dollar to the cent. It's like, well, that's cool, because then you know who you've got to give credit to, I suppose. If it's so specific, then it's kind of cool because it's sort of got God's signature.
Yeah.
But it also can be a little bit like, well, what about the apple tree? He doesn't create only enough apples for everybody to have exactly what they want. It's like, no, the whole tree blooms with apples, and there's way more than anybody can keep up with.
I've never heard that, and I really like that. It's it's a beautiful analogy of how God works, I think.
Yeah, of
And
generosity.
yeah, that God gives us fruit trees and that we have this abundance of fruit. Like it really is a good representation of, I think, how God works. And I think that on our end, we just don't utilize it. We don't invest the faith in God to allow him to do that for us.
Yeah, but the problem is, I don't know how. It's
Yeah.
not because I don't want to have all those apples. It's because I don't know how to get them. They're there, but I got little Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. I haven't figured out how to pick them yet.
Little
Cool, man.
plug.
Well, that was a good thought provoking passage. Tell Andy I said great job.
I will. I'll have to send you the link for
It's
the
in, yeah.
message.
Send me the link. I'll listen to it.